The leaders of the Group of Seven, of the G7 countries, gathered in Japan today with the foreign ministers to address a variety of global concerns. The G7 ministers gathered for a second day of meetings, as we pointed out, in Japan. After the recent attack on the Japanese Prime Minister, he vowed to keep world leaders safe during G7 meetings. Earlier, the leaders highlighted the need for a united front in the Indo-Pacific region and enforcing sanctions on Russia. During the 2 days of discussions, the world's heavy reliance on fossil fuels and the necessity of reducing carbon emissions in an effort to avert climate change will be reconciled. Geopolitical challenges in Asia are also set to come into greater focus now that Japan holds the rotating G7 presidency. But the attack on the Japanese Prime Minister earlier has also foreshadowed the G7 meet. However, as we pointed out, there are assurances coming in from Japan that security will be prioritized. On the other hand, officials of the G7 group, along with climate ministers, have also pledged to end plastic pollution in their respective countries by 2040. Let's listen in to what the Japanese foreign minister had to say.
We will firmly reject any unilateral attempts to change the status quo by force or Russia's aggression against Ukraine, as well as its threat of use of nuclear weapons. By doing so, we will demonstrate to the world the G7's strong determination to uphold the international order based on the rule of law.
And our colleague Sanjay Suri continues to be with us. Sanjay, help us understand what's on top of the agenda.
Well, we've been hearing about climate issues, but clearly that is the formal, almost bureaucratic part of the agenda.
Yeah.
The climate of fear over Taiwan is going to overshadow this meeting. It will dominate the discussions. People will be working out strategies to see what options they have, what they could do, were that situation on the ground to escalate, and on the seas around. This now has become the second hotspot after Ukraine in Europe, and this is an issue of security that will be of primary interest to all the leaders of the G7. They will have to figure out exactly what they can do to try and confront this. But let's not forget that there's a problem here within G7 or around G7. A lot of the G7, of course, overlaps with NATO, and we have seen fissures within NATO. France is speaking one language, the US another over Taiwan, and even now over Ukraine. So there is a question now how far any political agreement that the G7 leaders can arrive at will be backed by a NATO strategy and a NATO resources should it come to that. The two, of course, are not entirely separate. If NATO is weakened, then the G7 position will also be weakened.
Yeah, but Sanjay, I just want to understand as far as some of the developments that have taken place, specifically the attack on the Japanese Prime Minister. A lot of questions were raised as far as security is concerned. What is the kind of assurance that has come in from Japan?
Well, that is the kind of security that is quite easy to handle. We have seen, of course, that fail given the attempt, but it was an attempt and no more. The fact is that this kind of security arrangements at conferences are quite well drilled. People know exactly what to do. There are well-established procedures and precautions, and these have worked quite well. These will be put in place. Certainly, we can expect that the leaders from G7 who will be attending these meetings will be personally secure, and the site and the venue will be secure. The danger really is the security of the region that they will be addressing.
Okay, Sanjay, we'll leave the conversation there. Thanks a lot for getting us all those details.